Hello, Shortbox Nation. Welcome back to the podcast. Thanks for being here. If you're new to the show, welcome. Thanks for pressing play. My name is Botter, and this is the Shortbox Podcast, the comic book talk show that brings you the best conversations about comics and pop culture inspired by comics. This is episode 409, and today we're giving you a fresh review of the Marvels movie. And I guess really like the freshness level depends on when you're hearing this. If you're a Patreon subscriber, you're getting this on Saturday opening weekend. And if you're a normal listener, no offense, you're hearing this on Wednesday. What can I say? Being a supporter of the podcast has its perks, but I digress. We've been overdue a movie review for a couple of months now. The last one we did was when we gave a glowing review of Across the Spider-Verse. Movie that I think I saw twice, if not three times. That was the last time we did a movie review, and it got me thinking, we spent so much time last week talking about the now infamous MCU Variety article and talking about the MCU shortcomings and, the supposed downfall and the crisis, et cetera, et cetera. So I figured it would only be right to see the Marvels movie for myself. If anything, the article had the opposite effect of deterring me from watching this movie. I don't know, it just got me more interested in seeing if the MCU would bounce back with this one. So I wanted to see if all the shortcomings and challenges outlined in that article would translate in the film. So, I wanted to experience it for myself, and I'm dragging you guys along with me, all right? And not only that, but I had an interview kind of fall through, so it was either do a Marvel's review or no episode at all right? That's the truth of it. But I am genuine. I was curious to see about the Marvels movie, and I'm kind of happy I did. With that said, though, if you haven't seen the movie, or if you have any plans or interest to see this movie, this might be a good place to pause this episode or save it for later, or skip ahead to the last part of this episode and check out a new segment we're trying out that spotlights up-and-coming indie comic creators and kick-ass Kickstarter projects. In this episode, you'll hear about an awesome new Kickstarter for a brand new graphic novel called Everyday Black Belter. It's a collection of comics from the mind of a martially artistic family man, that family man being Jerome Cabanatan, who's a good friend of the show. Big shout out to Jerome. It's he's doing a graphic novel that combines comics, martial arts, and hip-hop, i.e. the most shortbox appropriate comic project out there. You'll get to hear from Jerome himself at the end of the show, so please stay tuned for that. Once again, I think I've stalled long enough. Just to play it safe, for the main portion of this episode, we will be talking about important plot points and scenes from the Marvels that might spoil the movie for you. So consider this your official spoiler warning, all right? Proceed at your own caution. With that said, let me go ahead and introduce my co-host today, all right? My panel is looking pretty strong today. We've got both of them on camera, so if you want to watch the video episode of this podcast, check it out on YouTube. But sitting in the Shortbox studio with me and on mic number 2 is a voice you'll recognize because, in my humble opinion, she's the real star of these movie review episodes. Ladies and gents, we got Blythe Brumleve on mic number 2. I'm not even giving my girl an applause.
Thank you.
There we go.
I was waiting for that moment.
All right, we got Blythe with us. And calling in all the way from the heartland of the U.S. is Mr. Chris Hacker on mic number 3. Give another round of applause. What up, Chris? Chris, dude, what is going on with the balloon?
It's the new Apple settings. I've been dealing with this in my own interviews, that if you give a peace sign, the Apple computer gives like balloons.
Get the fuck out of here.
Imagine being on like a professional, logistics B2B interview, and someone is doing that.
Okay. Chris was on the pod, I think, maybe 2-3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And it just kept happening. And we tried to pretend like it wasn't going on because we couldn't figure it out.
We had to bring it up at some point.
So good to know that, your MacBook is so good at spying on you. It knows when you're throwing up a peace sign.
Well,
that's pretty cute.
Outside of the balloons, Blythe, I just want to say it feels really good to be here, finally meeting you, but also being second place to Botter's original plans that he was going to have. I'm glad that we were a good backup plan.
I just got back from out of town. I pulled it together to go to the movies with him and do this. I could be sleeping right now.
Look.
He gets to hang out with his best friend and his boo thing, and he's like, nah, I'd rather do something else.
No. You guys took it the wrong way. I'm happy to be here with my boo thing and my friend here.
Yeah.
It's just originally, I was trying to get some interviews going, and I was like, I guess the Shortbox Nation's going to have to do without an episode this week. But through the power of my boo thing and my friend here, my best friend here, we got an episode made, all right?
Yeah.
And all it cost us was, just shy of 2 hours. I'm not even mad about the time commitment for this episode. All right. With that being said, how about we just start off? Let's just dive right into it, which is probably the most cliche podcast thing to say. Let's just dive right on into it. But I'm saying it anyways.
Feel attacked.
Speaking about runtime and all of that, fun fact here, this movie, and this was something I saw kind of celebrated about this movie in the early reviews, was that it was a rather short runtime. I believe it clocks in at around an hour, 45 minutes, if I'm not mistaken, around that time frame, which would technically put it, not even technically, it would make it the shortest MCU film of the, I think now 33 MCU films.
Yep.
The Incredible Hulk and I believe Iron Man #1 both clocked in at about an hour and 52 minutes. Avengers Endgame, no surprise here, being the longest of the MCU films at 3 hours and 1 minute. And did you know that, so that makes about the average length for all Marvel movies around 2 hours and 12 minutes. Mm-hmm. And I read a stat that if you were to watch all of the MCU films, just the movie releases, from the very first one up until Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, it would be a total runtime of 68 hours and 20 minutes. So it would take you about almost 3 full days to watch all of those movies, which doesn't sound too bad.
Yeah,
I'm not going to lie. You can spend way worse time.
Can I give you the top 5 really quick? Or I guess the low 5 of the MCU? I think I just pulled it up here a moment ago. So you were correct that
please.
The Marvels is coming in at #1 or last place, which however you want to say it, at 1 hour and 45 minutes. Number
Shortest,
2 was The Incredible Hulk at 1 hour and 52 minutes. Tying at number 2 is Thor: The Dark World at 1 hour and 52 minutes. Number 4 is Doctor Strange from 2016 at 1 hour and 55 minutes. And then number 5, Thor 2011, the first Thor at 1 hour and 55 minutes. So a lot of Thor there at the end. And I don't want to take over hosting duties here, but I want to ask you guys, because I have kind of an opinion on this. Did it feel like the shortest of the MCU films?
Okay, really quick. This is how I know I'm on a pod with some professional hosts, because that was the exact same question. I was literally going to toss it. It was like an alley-oop, I guess, Chris. Chris just took the ball and ran with it.
Dwayne Wade and LeBron James over here.
That was good. And you know what? How about we let Blythe answer that first? Did you feel the runtime? Was it too short? Was it too long? How'd you feel about it?
No, I mean, the overall, it felt, I guess, fine as far as runtime is concerned. I think the common complaint right now is that a lot of MCU materials feel too long, too bloated, and this one just felt like they hit the gas from start to finish. There were maybe some little gaps in between. I don't know if you want to get into it, but when they go to the water planet, that felt just tonally off to me. So that was the only thing that kind of took me out of the all gas, no brakes type of mentality from start to finish with this movie.
I'll probably echo that and say that the runtime is the least of this movie's problems, and I'm not trying to come off negative so quick, but I think there's different things you could point at that would, like to Blythe's point that she kind of hinted at. There's certain scenes that take you out of it, and then you kind of start thinking about the time. But I kind of I like that they respected my time. That was shit. We got home, and for our listeners, myself, Blythe, and Chris have literally just got out of the movie theater maybe 20-30 minutes. So this is a very fresh review. So bear with us here, but. Yeah, we got home, and it's not even it wasn't even 10 o'clock.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It took me longer to set up than, it took to, I think, even watch the movie. What about you, Chris? Did you feel the runtime?
No, not at all. I mean, I felt like this movie, it's probably not any surprise that it just kind of moves at a breakneck pace, and we're just moving from the jump. I mean, from the opening scene, we get to meet our big bad, which, I think this is one of the biggest complaints of the movie is, who is she? Firstly, Dar-Ben is her name in the film, but who is she? Zawe Ashton is the actor who plays the character. But from the moment we see her on camera, I'm like, okay. And I've heard the spoiler-free complaints about this villain in this film is a very Phase 1 kind of throwaway villain, and I wanted to kind of challenge that internally as I went into the film, and I think that opening scene almost was an affirmed thought of this is definitely going to be, this villain is going to be a placeholder for the overall narrative for the other three, for Captain Marvel, for Monica, and for Kamala. So but all that to be said, it goes by very quickly, and I think The only part that felt like
Very
it lagged slightly was after they realized that their powers are interconnected. There's a scene where Kamala's parents go with Nick Fury up to the Saber ship. And right around that time was maybe the only time that I wanted to kind of check my watch or, just like I wasn't fully engaged with the film. But overall, like you said, I'm kind of happy that Kevin Feige and co. Nia DaCosta, the director, were respecting our time with this story and we're able to get us in and out real quick with our MCU fix.
Chris, just out of curiosity here, what was your audience like? What was the theater? Was it packed? Was there was it noticeable?
Yeah, it was pretty packed, honestly. So I bought, this is actually a good segue into like a bigger discussion, which is that the MCU overall for me has been lacking, and I hate to say that because I've been there since Iron Man 2008, and I've watched every film in theater since then, and it used to be this fun sort of adventure to try to get tickets for preview night, right? Obviously, we're recording this on Friday, November 10th, so it's a day after preview night. And I actually want to bring up preview night here in just a moment as well in terms of box office. But when I went to buy my ticket, I bought it at the door. I didn't even go to like Fandango or AMC app. Back in the day, you had to fight for that early screening. And I went to a Dolby Theater here in Indianapolis. So that's like the premier way to watch it. You either watch it at IMAX or you watch it at the Dolby Theater. Do you want a large screen or do you want booming sound? I chose Dolby, and it was packed, but it wasn't, I was still able to get tickets at the door. So all that to be said, it was a pretty animated crowd. I know at one point I heard behind me these two people fighting because of this. I think there was some, there's an Asian actor in this who ends up being Carol's like makeshift husband from the Singing Planet. I think there were some.
The Prince.
Park Seo Joon.
I think he's a very popular
he plays Prince Yan
actor on the other side of the country, or the other side of the world. And there were some fans of his in my theater. Cool. And these two people were fighting during the end credit scene because every time this guy showed up on screen, these group of girls were like going wild. So by the time that we get to see the post credit scene, and we'll talk about that here in just a bit, I'm sure. All I could hear was these two people yapping behind me.
Yeah, I would say our theater was. It took a while to get to like a medium. I think about half of it was maybe full.
Being generous.
Yeah,
because I always gauge based on if I can put my purse in the seat next to me.
That's a good
and
point.
All of our extra food.
I did have a trash seat.
And I did have a trash seat.
That's right. But I will say the folks there did sound like they were having a good time. Like I heard audible laughs. Like it felt like people were the jokes were hitting for certain people.
Was Iman Vellani also the most popular person in your guys' viewing as well?
Come on, man. We literally left the movie and I said,
that's Kamala Khan.
Yeah, Kamala Khan. And I told her that this movie definitely accomplishes its mission of getting her in front of, and on the big screen and in front of more people, and especially for folks like ourselves that skipped over the Miss Marvel show. So I didn't have any point of reference to like judge her, or I didn't go in knowing really anything about her show or what transpired. So this was an excellent introduction to her. Like I was like, oh, she is just as likable as I heard. The press runs that I did watch, she seems really happy to be her enthusiasm is pretty contagious. I think anytime she's on screen, it kind of reminds you of being like a kid again, and being in love with your heroes. And I think that was a bigger theme. Not to get too ahead, but I think that was a big theme of the movie is like hero worship and being a role model and an inspiration. And I thought through Iman Vellani's performance, that theme was very strong.
Yeah, as soon as we got out of the movie, I looked to you and said she's going to be a star.
Oh yeah,
and she loves the MCU. It would be essentially like Kevin walking into my house right now and handing me the Spider-Man suit and saying, "You're Peter Parker for the next 6 movies. Go crazy." I would immediately hop on social media like Iman does. I would be writing a Spider-Man comic just like she is with Ms. Marvel, the New Mutant, because now officially in the comics, Ms. Marvel is a mutant now, as she is also in the MCU. So. She's very enthusiastic, and I think as someone who watched Ms. Marvel on Disney Plus when it first came out, the first episode is absolutely a banger, and then the other 5 episodes are forgettable at best. She is very charming, and I think her side characters, as we've seen in this movie and the Marvels, her parents and her brother, and also we don't see her best friends in the Marvels movie, but also in the show, they're all great. It's just It's the show. It's the show around these characters that are kind of lacking.
Got it.
So her whole family is in that show too, because that to me, I keep thinking, we keep saying this not to get ahead, but that the whole family was really the star of the entire movie for me.
Yeah, I guess one of the bigger reasons I skipped over the Miss Marvel show was that it just came off like family, family sitcom, and I don't really watch those anyway, so it didn't interest me in that regard, but. I will say she definitely was the star of the show, if not. Yeah, I think it's an easy argument to say she's.
There was also a lot going on at that time. I think it was also like Game of Thrones was on at that time. Rings of Power was on.
That is right. Yeah,
so there were a lot of things competing for your attention, and that one just kind of fell to the wayside for me.
I guess speaking of audience, I asked about what your theater was like and what the audience was like, because I'm looking at the current Rotten Tomatoes score just out of curiosity. I don't think I ever really let any of these scores drive like my opinion or me. Obviously I went and seen the movie anyways, but I'm looking at the Rotten Tomatoes score at the time of this recording. It's Friday, November 10th, the Friday of release date. Audience score is looking pretty. It's 85% right now, over 500 plus verified ratings, versus the 62% tomato meter, which is about like half of that many ratings. So this is starting out early. It seems like audience seems to like it. I want to say 62 is failure. That's like, I mean, that's like a mid movie.
Kind of sticking with the sticking with the trend of recent MCU. I think the MCU of yesteryear, your phase 1, 2, and 3, usually sat around anywhere between 70 to 90% on Rotten Tomatoes, and then it seems like since probably since the pandemic, I would even say. A lot of the television series and the movies have been sitting around that 50 to 60 with your occasional dud like Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, which I think was in the 30s. Black Widow was pretty low as well, if I remember correctly. So, 60, or what did we say it was, 80, 81%? 85.
Well, 85% for audience score, 62
can I just quickly say, Aaron, who is my co-host on the Oblivion Bar, is a notorious, hater of the first Captain Marvel from 2019. And I'll be the first to admit that I may have looked at that film with rose-colored glasses on initially because I adore the Kelly Sue DeConnick run from 2012. The Captain Marvel, this version of Carol that we have in the movies is from Kelly's run from back in the day. And I love that run. So when I saw that first film, I saw so much of that run in that movie, and I loved it. Going back and watching it here recently, I feel like it's kind of dampened a little bit my thoughts on it. It is kind of a forgettable MCU film. It's a phase 1 film coming out during phase 4, and it seems, or I guess phase 3 at that time. So we were talking about this before the recording. The phases are all over the place. We don't even know what phase we're on anymore. But
listeners, here's how washed I am. I had to literally Google what phase of the MCU are we in, and Google is no help either. These articles are terrible trying to figure out sometimes the MCU phase timeline.
But all that to be said, but all that to be said, I had a great time with this movie. It is silly. It doesn't look great. Yeah. It's like some of the errors in this movie, like the green screen, a lot of the main complaints with the MCU that we've seen over the last couple films are still very present. But I think where the movie succeeds is with its main characters, with Iman Vellani, with Tiana Paris, and with Brie Larson. I think those three together and individually are really great in this movie. And outside of some 1,000-yard stares that we get from Brie Larson, and outside of some very annoying screams from Iman Vellani, I think everybody is great in their role.
Dude, 1,000-yard stares describes Brie Larson's acting pretty perfectly. Because I was telling Blythe pretty bluntly, Brie Larson in this role, I don't think does anything for me acting-wise.
Actor,
her acting,
Brie Larson.
Fair enough, but in this role, I don't see it. I just it doesn't resonate with me per se, and none of the emotions comes across really well, and I don't know, it just doesn't resonate for me per se.
Don't tell her to smile. Don't tell her to smile.
I think that's another.
You would look prettier if you smiled, Carol.
I would not. Yo, did you see the guns on her? I will say she looks like she got in the gym for this.
Really? I had the complete opposite opinion of her. I thought she looked scrawny in this. I thought the arms, like she could have been a little bit more toned.
Okay.
I that was one thing I very vividly noticed, that she had lost a lot of weight compared to previous Captain
The last-
the last movie. And for this one, I was like, she could have at least done some push-ups, because there was no tone definition in her arms, in my opinion. She would look scrawny. I was like, you don't look strong.
Okay.
Sorry.
Thank you,
Right.
Blythe, for
Like, Blythe
taking
said
over
that,
that,
didn't he? So-
because I can't say that. I don't think Bot or I,
Well-
we can't say that.
Yeah, thank you. All right, I guess I'm blind. Look, I said that she looked buff. I guess I was completely wrong.
No, I mean, she's obviously a very in shape
She's
woman.
in shape.
But
Yeah.
she didn't look strong to me. She didn't look like she was lifting weights at all for this. Maybe like physically, she kind of phoned it in.
She went in and relied on the CGI powers, is what you're saying. Mm-hmm. But back to the score, and Chris, I think I'm right there with you. I think if you're going in and expecting, kind of like just outrageous fun, then you're gonna get it. I mean, I'm looking at this audience score, and the icon being like a popcorn, a can or a tin of popcorn. Yeah, this is like a
Total brain
popcorn
candy.
movie. It's goofy. Big time. And I'm looking at this critics consensus, and it's I think it nails it for me. It says funny, refreshingly brief, and elevated by the chemistry of its three leads. The Marvels is easy to enjoy in the moment, despite its cluttered story and jumbled tonal shift. I think I would add jarring too. There's a lot of just jarring moments in it that took me out, and I really. There's moments I really wanted to really like it. Like when they're bonding together and having that training montage, I was in it. I was like, oh wow, this is like kind of deep. Like, this is like a lot of fun. But then they just had, like Blythe brought up the water planet and
Alonda.
the random musical.
Awful.
Yeah.
Awful.
That I guess that's where it comes in, the jumbled tonal shifts of this quote. It was like those moments where I was like, all right, yeah, okay, this is fun. This is weird. Wait, so I've given kind of my score. I'd say, well, I guess I wanted to know what was your score, and I had told Blythe in the car that this sits about 65%. I think I'd give it a strong mid 60. Chris, where
so
you
we're
at?
rating it out of if I was giving it a score on Rotten Tomato, that's what we're kind of
At
going for.
100. Yeah, something like that. Like out of 100%. Did you hear me?
The long pause.
Sorry, can you hear
Oh
me?
no.
Okay, yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, I
now.
can hear you.
It's,
Can you hear me?
It's weird. I don't know why we're
There
pausing.
we go.
But anyway, sorry.
Okay, that was weird.
I thought it was
Yeah.
like the dramatic long pause.
Yeah, I was like, whoa, what's the score, Chris?
So
He's like
sorry,
12.
I missed the part. So we're doing this out of the Rotten Tomato scoring. Okay.
Yeah. Let's just mimic it.
If
Out
we're
of
okay,
100%.
so I guess the real way to do this is I have to compare it to the original Captain Marvel. So if I was going to give Captain Marvel a score, I would probably give that like a 75 out of 100. I would probably give this 70. No, I'll say 68%. 68% out of 100.
Okay.
For the Marvels, because I think it's just
Okay.
only slightly. The fun parts are much more fun than the original, but I think we are starting to see the serious cracks in the Marvel universe right now. Like the Marvel Studios itself is crumbling in a lot of different ways. This Variety, article that we keep referring to, I think was spot on some very specific points, and I think this movie is a great kind of reflection of that.
Okay, well said. Life, what about you? What are you rating this?
I would say it was a good escape for a couple of hours, but I'd still only give it like a 6 out of 10. So Rotten Tomatoes, I guess 60%. for
Okay.
me.
All right, that's a good start. Now I want to start working through. So we've given our kind of high level remarks, ratings out the way. Let's get into like some of the nitty gritty. Coming out of this movie, less than about an hour since the ending. I was going to ask what scenes, but I think it's probably important that we go ahead and start maybe with the most freshest thing, maybe still on our mind, which is
you want
the
to skip
end
all the way to the
credits.
end credits?
And then we'll work through some of the particular movies. Just because it's absolutely fresh in my mind, let's just get it out the way. I think a lot of, that's the last thing a lot of people, that's the last
It
thing
was
you
a
saw,
whoa
right?
moment.
That was an absolute whoa moment.
Do you mind if I just pull a quick audible before we get to the end credits?
Go,
Because
Chris.
we're kind of like at the beginning, like before we start talking about the film, and I want to briefly bring up the box office, if that's okay, because I feel like that adds a little bit of context to where we are with the MCU. And I don't know if Botter, do you have that in your notes at all in terms of like the episode?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
No,
So
I
the
don't have it.
Marvels
If you have it, go
earned
ahead.
6.6 million domestically during its preview night. So that was yesterday. and it's projected to get 49.6 million domestically. Now, that is incredibly low compared to the 2019 original at 20.7 million during preview night, which it eventually got 159.4 million in its opening weekend. So again, to compare that, we've got the Marvels, which is projected to get basically 50 million compared to 2019's Captain Marvel at basically 160 million. That's wild. The difference is insane. Now, there's a lot of things that go along with that. Of course, Captain Marvel came out in between Infinity War and Endgame, so there's a lot of hype around that. It was during that, great phase. Captain Marvel was a big character, and of course, I think the Marvel suffers because of the reaction from Captain Marvel. Like I think there's a lot of things going on. Not to mention SAG-AFTRA, WGA. There's a lot of things that they couldn't promote this movie until like yesterday, essentially. So this is the third lowest MCU opening in the history of the MCU, only ahead of the Incredible Hulk at 2 million in its preview night, and then at 55.4 million in its opening weekend, and then the original Ant-Man at 6.6 in its preview night, and then 57.2 million in its opening weekend. Now, my last little bit of movie money news is that other films with a higher preview night than the Marvels, we have Thor: The Dark World got 7.1 million in its opening night. The Eternals got 9.5 million in its opening night. And then just to put a little cherry on top, we've got Taylor Swift, the Eras Tour, got 16.7 million in its opening night. So that's where we're at right now, everybody.
You wouldn't be Chris Hacker if you didn't mention a Taylor Swift, if you didn't drop a Taylor Swift bar. That was good. And throughout that whole time, I think I changed my mind. Let's save the end credits for later, towards the end, and let's talk about maybe other scenes that were most prominent, or still are still in your head that are that stood out. Obviously this is very short retrospective, but when you think back to the movie, where does your mind go as far as like standout scenes or most immediate scenes? Blythe, if you want to take that.
Oh gosh, that's such a tough question because I feel like it really is just all of the scenes that Kamala was in. That character just really drew me in. I kind of have a different opinion than Chris in that I don't think that the three of them had very good chemistry together. I thought that Kamala was really the shining star of the three of them, and they almost felt. There's a lot of rumors like behind the scenes and that the Monica Rambeau character and Brie Larson did not get along whatsoever, and that it was a lot of sort of fighting between or not fighting, but just
artistic
general
differences?
sure, but maybe just like personality differences between the two, and I thought that was very evident on screen. And I thought Kamala was really like the comedic break. She was really the sentimental break for me. I loved her family, so it was really interesting to hear from the perspective of watching the Disney Plus show, because I went into this initially worried within the first sort of 20, 30 minutes that, crap, I didn't watch her show. I didn't finish Secret Invasion. Is that going to affect my viewing experience here? Because it just, I think, sort of speaks to the overall Marvel landscape that I don't know what the hell I'm supposed to pay attention to. Am I supposed to watch everything to be prepared for the next thing? And I was initially worried that would affect my viewing experience. And so all that to say that really any scene that she was in, that Kamala was in, was I thoroughly enjoyed. Her family for sure, but then everything else, Samuel L. Jackson, I kind of made the comment to you that he's just collecting checks, kind of like Harrison Ford. Totally respect it, but a couple of his like one-liners and scenes in that I thought were very good. But I would say Samuel L. Jackson and Kamala Khan really just saved it for me for this movie.
Samuel Jackson, they're like, hey, this movie needs a little edge. Let's bring Nick Fury in so he could say, shit twice at least and like shoot people. Like he's definitely the edge. But I think I missed the days when we only saw Nick Fury for like 10 seconds in the movie. Like having the mysteriousness to him, that espionage angle. I kind of miss that. Now he's like very
he's like
apparent,
Pappy that hangs out in the background and just shoots people. Oh, Pappy's along for the ride.
Yeah, he definitely brings the edge, like that adult humor, But I would say the scene that is living on my head rent free right now is maybe not my favorite scene, which was that training montage, but maybe the weirdest scene I've probably seen in an MCU film, which was their big escape plan, which was to have all of the scientists or everyone on board get eaten by baby alien kittens.
Hated it.
I think, yeah, I was, yes, thank you, Flurkins, not baby kittens.
But put some respect on the Flurkins. Okay, they'll eat you. They'll eat you.
You better put some Flurkin respect on these Flurkins. But it was just really fucking weird. I was like, this feels like this was a Guardians of the Galaxy throwaway gag or scene that they were like, hey, let's recycle that. You know, like this probably would have fit better in a James Gunn movie where it's, you know, pretty, you know, outlandish and wild. But I think even he would be like, nah, that sounds like a pretty terrible idea. Like this, and they spent so much time on it. And I'm like, man, for a movie that doesn't have that much runtime, we're spending a lot of time on some really wacky, goofy, you know, the stakes didn't feel that high because it was so goofy in the middle of this escape scene. It kind of just like took me out of it. I was like, man, this is really
I think you just
weird.
You just described the MCU in a nutshell, because anytime they have a moment where a serious moment presents itself, they have to undercut it with some comedy somewhere. And that's essentially what they did. And that's because I think in that moment they had the kind of come to Jesus moment with Monica and Carol, right? That was around that time where they had to kind of come to grips with the fact that Carol did come back to Earth at one point while Monica was blipped during Endgame. So they were kind of coming to grips with that. They were kind of planning. They went to that singing planet. Was it Alanda? So a lot of things happening all at once. And yeah, it felt like they needed to get the kids back on board with a funny cat montage.
Yeah. You know what? And I guess I can go ahead and say this because it's appropriate here. This movie made me think that Marvel was trying to pander to too many people. Like, was trying to, like, cater to too many people. Or, like, they wanted, like, the family. You know, like, make it a family movie. Make it a sci-fi movie. Make it, like, you know, a redemption for the Captain Marvel. Like, it was almost too much in one movie with not enough, like, runway to do all of that, like, really well. And some of the scenes that we decided to, like, stay on for a good bit just was really interesting. And like, I go back to jarring. That was just a really jarring scene.
Wasn't the director, I think I'm blanking on her last name, but Nina, she didn't finish the film. And Kevin Feige stepped in, and she had interviews where she said this is Kevin's film. And she didn't even stay around to promote. Like, she's already in another city, like, filming a new movie, and she didn't stay to finish this one. So it felt very much, that was evident in the end result.
Well, I think the shooters some bail. I also understand that Marvel tends to do that too. Like, that's kind of like the norm, where it's like you get your movie to a good stopping point and you do start working on your next project. And I heard her say in an interview in her defense, she said that, you know, when she left to start the other movie, the Captain Marvel movie, like, everyone knew the vision, knew the plan, like, you know, had very clear instructions on, you know, what to do in post-credit.
Well, it was also delayed twice, so how long are you supposed to wait around for Disney to make these kinds of decisions?
And this kind of brings up a larger point in terms of, like, Bar, you mentioned a moment ago about, like, who are they trying to please here? Is it everyone? Because then that's when you're going to please no one. And that's, and again, I think that's a good kind of an analysis of the MCU since post-pandemic, since Endgame, really, is that they're shooting their net too wide. And it seems like the people who were on board and who were going to these movies are no longer invested anymore. And again, I think, you know, of course, we're talking about this literally within hours of seeing it on the second day. So we're clearly still in this somehow. But, like, there's something to be said, again, about the box office. We were just talking about a moment ago about how, you know, the original Captain Marvel, that's not a great example, again, because we were, like, mid-Infinity War / Endgame. So people were very much invested in not only Captain Marvel, but the MCU. But, like, I still think that if you look at it, the fact that the Marvels is the third lowest opening weekend overall is wild compared to its predecessor, which was a $1 billion movie. Like, Captain Marvel is one of, like, 7 MCU films that hit $1 billion. So there's something missing. Again, that Variety article that people are kind of, you alluded to it in your last episode, Botter, here on the Short Box, that, like, how much of this can we take for, you know, for verbatim? Like, some of this is speculation, some of it isn't, of course, but I'm kind of spinning my wheels because I was thinking about what my scene was during this film, And I think it might be when they first discovered that their powers are entangled, and you have that Skrillex Rat-a-tat song playing in the background. And I thought it was fun. Like, specifically, and I know we keep harping on this, but like Ms. Marvel, Iman Vellani, really showcasing what she can do here with her powers. Of course, in the comics, it's her Embiggen powers, but in this, she has like light-based powers. No, yeah.
And I'm not mad at the light-based power. I know, like, there was a lot of some fanboys that were like upset about the change.
Not a problem at all.
It still looks good. You know, they're still able to accomplish what she can do. I mean, yeah, the look looks vastly different, but I thought the execution, she's still doing the same thing. She's throwing big fist punches. Now she can also like create those little steps. I thought, it was cool to watch her powers as a first timer, like really get to see it like in motion.
They're separating her from Reed,
this is not
of
bad
course. I think that's like the main. I think that's something that a lot of people are kind of privy to, is that we're going to be getting the Fantastic Four here in the next couple of years.
Okay,
and of course he has a very similar power as Kamala Khan. So let me ask you this before I move on. I'm curious because talking about this scene where, again, we had the Skrillex track in the background and they're all kind of figuring out how they keep using their powers and they keep switching in between each other. For everyone who watched Secret Invasion, which I'm talking to all 9 of you right now, isn't it wild that Nick Fury is just like totally happy, totally cool after the events of Secret Invasion? Like, did that happen? Like, what are we doing right now?
Chris, that's a good point, because before the movie started, Blythe had turned to me and said, "Where is this at in the timeline?" And I could not. And I think this maybe more so speaks to my whatever you want to call it, disinterest in keeping track of it all anymore, like what I used to, because I don't really know where this movie. I can assume this is like supposed to be the current latest timeline, but I'm not really that confident. I don't know how, like to your point, where Secret Invasion fits in. And I think it goes right back to Nick Fury now being like, like this poster child for like quirky one-liner, like, like you said, like I don't know, it's just a weird Nick Fury. And you're right, coming off of Secret Invasion, which was, heavy espionage, like back to his espionage roots and, the secrets that he has. And then you see this movie, it's like a complete 180. So even like their characterization is like, which one am I supposed to follow? I get that these characters can be multifaceted, but
he lost
Nick Fury
Hill.
shouldn't be this hot.
He lost his best friend, his best skull friend, and his surrogate daughter hates him, and he lost his wife. And now he's just chilling up on on the Saber ship again. You know what I mean?
This is how he hides his pain. He hangs out with a 300-year-old scientist.
Did he get himself a new Skrull boo?
Astronaut?
You think?
And
I wonder. Yeah, possibly. Why not?
Possibly.
Those 2 characters, I don't even think got their name. I remember thinking like, I don't know any of these characters' names from the villain. I know Chris, you said the villain,
which I think is a very forgetful. That's a terrible name. Like I think as soon as I heard her name,
remember
I was
this
like, forgetful villain. Even though
I'm gonna look it up later.
Can I also say that what an interesting time for this movie to come out, and I for some reason I could not hone in on the word entanglement and not think Jada and Will Smith. I'm like, man, if they would have just released this movie when it was supposed to come out, if they would have dropped this movie when it was supposed to come out, they could have like got ahead of the whole entanglement now being tied to those fucking weirdos,
Well,
so just a little
speaking of names
noticed,
really quickly before we move on, I want to just quickly bring up that during the credits, when I was waiting for the end credit scene, they were showing, they always have like the animated end credit scene. During that, or no, I'm sorry, it was afterwards. It was after the mid credit scene. They kind of go down the line really quickly, and one of the actors or one of the characters in the film is Dorji. And I remember thinking, who is this? Like, how do I know his name? And he's the Emperor. He's like the leader of the Skrulls on that planet that eventually gets sucked up into not the water, it's the air, the air that Dar Ben or
the atmosphere.
And I remember thinking like, who is this character? Because the name sounds familiar, and I looked it up afterwards. He's the guy who creates the Super Skrull in the comics. Now, obviously, I'm sure that's not what happens in the MCU, because that was
cool.
Secret Invasion. But like, I just thought that was really interesting that they brought him into this movie, and he was the one who created the Super Skrull program in the comics. So,
Chris, that is such a comic book deep cut. I wish I had the Homer soundbite. Nerd. word. All right. So we just talked about the most prominent scenes that we're still in our head after this viewing. How about let's get into some positivity. What are some of the highlights? We've spoken at length about Iman Vellani. I'm gonna let's play the name game. I'm sorry, I'm kind of shifting really quickly, but let's play the name game, and I'm gonna name some of the characters and just tell me what scenes come to mind, any words or commentary. We've spoken at length about Iman Vellani, so I'll save that. Let's go to Monica Rambeau. What scenes or words do you got for Monica?
Beautiful.
Not very much.
Tiana Paris is stunning. I'll say that. No, I'll.
Okay.
Yeah, I feel like that's kind of a cop out.
You know what? I've got one. And our listeners watching the video know your boys stay writing notes in the theater. All right, so I came prepared.
I wish I would have
homework.
brought a notepad just so I had more to say.
Okay, I guess I am going to just skip forward to the end scene, but her waking up and seeing her mom. And, that scene there reminded me of episode 1 to WandaVision, how fucking crazy that episode was, focusing on her waking up, post, coming back from the blip. She just missed, her mom dying. So that payoff was pretty cool to see, and I thought she really acted her ass off in that moment. That was really believable. And also, and I guess this ties into maybe a highlight for me, which was that kind of training montage, but when Carol Danvers, Monica, and Kamala both have that memory thing hooked up together. I thought that was a really cool way of kind of telling you how they're all connected by showing you. And I was like, yes, finally, like more show. Because one critique I've got about the MCU, not to go into a tangent, is that it feels like lately they've been kind of talking down to like us as viewers. Like they're having to do so much exposition about what the danger is, what timeline and multiverses mean. Like I felt like they described this gateway system at least 3-4 times, and I was like, I get it. It just isn't the clearest story vehicle. But regardless, that scene where they're all strapped in the memories together, and like she's telling Carol, like, hey, I don't want to see this. Like I don't want to see your moment with my mom, the last moments of my mom through your vision. I thought that was a good way of showing that friction between them. Chris, aside from the actress being stunning, anything you want to add about Monica?
I'm going to set my male gaze aside for a moment and also say that Monica, I think her role on the team of, again, they even... I'm going to say a brief gripe, and then I'm going to talk about Monica. Anytime that a movie says the name, like like Will Smith, so what are we, some kind of Suicide Squad or something? That's what she does. I think it's Kamala. Kamala's like, so we're the Marvels. We're a team.
She's like the Marvels.
I hate that. But anyway, Monica, I think her role on this team is that she's kind of like the oak tree. You've got Carol, who is her bravado is just blowing out of the spaceship. She just believes that she can do everything by herself because she has been for a while. Again, going back to that scene in Endgame where she's like, not a lot of planets have the Avengers. I'm all that they have, and she believes that wholeheartedly. She's been alone doing this herself for a very long time. So, and we see this multiple times in the movie of her trying to take this all on by herself. So we've got her on one side, then we've got Kamala on the other side, who's just fangirling the entire time. And anytime that she's kind of like the, I don't want to say like, well, yeah, of course.
She's the realist.
And I don't want to say she's like a damsel in distress, but like she will often put herself at risk because she wants to help. And she's so young and she doesn't understand that her actions have consequences in these moments. And it happens multiple times on that Tarax planet that we see the Skrulls. So you have both of these big personalities on each side of you, and it feels like Monica is the only one that's like thinking levelly throughout this entire film. And it's ironic because at the end of the film, she's the one who sacrifices herself in that, and she ends up in that other reality. So I found that really interesting, and she has her kind of like Iron Man moment, which I don't think was earned, but it was still pretty cool to see.
Well said. I wish they would just decide whether she's very competent and smart or like, always questioning. I'm like, man, she's really good when she's like confident and smart, but then other scenes she almost contradicts it by being like kind of clueless. And you're like, nah, you're a fucking scientist and like, you survived the WandaVision, all right? Like, don't doubt yourself.
How did she get from WandaVision to this role here?
Did you not see
a
WandaVision,
big
Blythe?
part of that
No,
transition?
Okay.
I did,
Yeah.
and I loved it. But didn't she kind of?
So the end.
What happened after that?
I think they. I
She's
think
now
they
working for
They
Nick
explained
Fury.
it in the movie. She said that what she said that she got she was earthbound because they wanted to study her powers, and that's how she ended up with Nick Fury or something like that. They explained it in the movie. I didn't obviously didn't do a good job of catching all of it, but you know what I'm saying.
The
That
end of
was a
WandaVision,
quick little
she
exposition
meets
line.
a Skrull in that theater in at the end of WandaVision, and they
that's
essentially
right.
recruit her to
Damn, it's been a
Sword.
while.
Or I keep saying Saber, it's Sword. I don't know why I keep getting that mixed up, but it is Sword. And in the movie, she says that she wanted to go to space, but like you said, she got kind of grounded here on Earth because they weren't going to space
Ground
anymore.
is the word I'm thinking of, yeah.
I think that's it. But again, it's kind of a leap that she immediately starts working for Nick Fury. It's like Nick Fury, like out with Maria Hill, bring in Monica Rambeau.
Damn, it didn't even have a chance to cry.
Damn.
You know, and it's I guess it's wild to hear that even in the MCU, NASA is having trouble funding trips.
Where's Elon in this universe? Get him involved with Sword and Shield.
All right, who else do we got? So we've talked a little about Nick Fury. I want to, let's go to the star of the show. Standout moments, or what comes to mind when you think of Brie Larson in this movie as Carol Danvers? Any standout?
Ironically,
scenes or
she's kind
moments?
of like the low. She's kind of the low end of this team. I think she has the least amount to offer because again, she's got that 1,000-yard stare. And I love Brie Larson. We were making fun earlier about her being an Oscar winner because she is. But like, other than her Oscar win for The Room, she's done kind of crap movies since then. I mean, I can't think of another film outside of Scott Pilgrim versus the World and Captain Marvel that she's been like good to average in. So. Yeah, I mean, in this movie, she's kind of a vehicle. She's like you would have thought that it would have been Kamala being the vehicle for the audience, but it seems like Captain Marvel is kind of the vehicle for the audience. She's kind of along for the ride, it seems like, in this movie. And she doesn't really have like a saving moment. She doesn't save Monica at the end of the film. She doesn't take out the big bad. I mean, kind of, but the big bad kind of takes out herself. But yeah, it's odd, right?
I think that was sort of the overall storyline with her character as a whole, is that she's been sidelined in her own movie. And if you think about the juxtaposition of where she was being positioned
in the Endgame, where she
before
was like,
Endgame, she's the next big thing after Endgame. And now she's been sidelined in her own movie, in a movie that has been delayed several times. And she's not even the star of her own movie. And I think, with a lot of like red carpet interviews that she's done, some of the press tours that she did previously with a lot of the Avengers crew, I just, it's such an interesting storyline to watch with both her character just in real life and then on screen as well. Just how she sort of hinged her entire career essentially on this character. And now
doesn't it kind of seem like Brie
what is it
Larson just
for?
doesn't want to be Captain Marvel anymore?
dude, I was just about to say she did a really good job of convincing me she's probably done with this, and I wouldn't blame her, right? Like, she's had to deal with
Freaking
a lot
incels.
playing this role.
Right.
I mean, a lot of it just being because of a lot of it being from toxic fan base. I'm sure like there's a lot of industry drama and behind the scenes,
And she's
corner
also
stuff.
just not the nicest person either. Like, if you saw some of her press
got-
runs,
she's got, like-
she's kind of a jerk.
She got
And
that
maybe
serious
people just
RBF.
didn't like
for
working
sure.
with
That's
her.
that and go ahead.
And even, I was going to say Monica Rambeau's character, that actress, reportedly they did not get along on set. And so it kind of, if it's a lot of issues surrounding you, maybe it's you.
Yeah, I will say she did a good job of passing the torch, and that is, and I think when did I say it? Was it WandaVision? I at first said, my theory is that this entire phase is, them passing the torch. Like, hey, it's time to, these actors are aging out. They want to do different things. Whatever the reason may be, it's time for us to go ahead and bring in the new crop of actors, fresh young faces, get that, younger target demo. And this is what that movie felt like. It felt like a filler, but also passing the torch. Let's set up, Amon Vellani. Let's get her on the big screen. Let's get her introduced, I mean, Chris, I'm right there with you. I felt that Brie Larson was like, let's get this done.
Can
Let's
we hurry
get
up?
this
I got to
done
be on the
so
set
I
of
can
Fast
move on
X in
from
the
this
next
shit.
10 minutes, guys. I got to cash that check really quick as well.
I I am curious of what you guys think about, I guess, maybe the tonal shift in Marvel with going to more of the Kate Bishop and Kamala Khan, who are, they have the humor, they have the personality.
The charisma, they've got charisma.
But do they have the seriousness?
I think they just need to have a serious, Hawkeye still had like some serious. I mean, it was a fun show, and I think Kate Bishop's role was like bring a little bit of a brevity or a levity to it. But I think with the right script, I think someone
Haley Steinfeld.
Haley Stanfield? Steinfeld, thank you. Can do it. Iman Vellani, I'd be curious to see how she does drama and very serious acting. But maybe that's not her role. Maybe they empower someone that does that really well.
And maybe that's just the overall shift with Marvel in
just
general.
Lighter, funner.
Yeah, lighter, funner, younger.
It's like Men in Black.
Maybe that's just what it is now.
Old and busted, new hotness. Old and busted, new hotness. And I don't want to say.
Speaking really quick. Speaking of Men in Black, big shout out to Tessa Thompson for a very short cameo. But she decided to show up in her Men in Black costume from the last movie she did, right?
And also continuing the fan theory that Valkyrie and Carol are in a relationship. They get a little kiss on the cheek there.
Yeah, I noticed that. I was like, wow, the one scene where Brie Larson has got some sort of chemistry with the other actors.
So we were talking about this a moment ago, and I want to keep this conversation going because I don't want to sound like an old curmudgeony, oh man, back in my day in 2008, Phase 1 was so great, but none of these newer actors minus Tom Holland have the stature of a Robert Downey Jr., a Chris Evans. Chris Hemsworth and Jeremy Renner are still kicking right now, by the way. Scarlett Johansson, these actors could carry a film by themselves. Now, against, Scarlett Johansson, Black Widow, your temperature may vary depending on how you feel about that film. But I think I'm trying to think this has been the biggest issue with the next phase among many issues is who is taking the reins? Who is taking over the right? Is it Doctor Strange?
He's the point person.
I don't think so. Multiverse of Madness wasn't that good, if you ask me. Is it going to be Black Panther? All things considered, I don't think it's going to be what's her name. And unfortunately, Chadwick Boseman is no longer with us. Is it going to be Chris Hemsworth? His last movie was bad too. So it's not going to be Captain Marvel either because we've been talking about it for the last hour. So what do we do here?
And not only that, but Chris Hemsworth is a prime example of an actor who is. I think he's gone on to say I'm ready to do other stuff.
He said he won't come back unless there's actual changes to the Thor character.
Also apparently he has some health issues that he's worried about as well, where his acting in general is kind of at risk at the moment. So I'm sure he doesn't want to waste. I think his family has
is it Parkinson's?
It's either Parkinson's or ALS or one of the two.
They put out a whole show about it on Disney Plus, of him trying to fight mortality, which I'm kind of interested in watching. But yeah, he's got to Chris's point, he's got health things that have, I think, maybe shifted his perspective and priorities, which is awesome. I got one more character I want to bring up, and kind of interestingly, looking at this IMDb, there isn't a lot of big actors or roles in this movie to pick from. Even though in my mind it did feel a little crowded with the addition of Kamala Khan's family. It was it felt like a big cast, but not really. Looking at this IMDb. And I think the last actor that I want to hear your thoughts on was our antagonist, Dar-Ben, played by Zawe Ashton. Any scenes or commentary come to mind?
No, very forgettable.
I've got one. I will say this. The motivation for her, was commendable. And I think if they would have spent just a little more time with her origin, with with on the planet of Hala, seeing how the Kree are living now. You know what I'm saying? They did a very quick scene where they're all in gas masks and they're afraid to take it off to breathe in the air. But I think really kind of showing us that war, because they mentioned the Kree Skrull War. They also mentioned ever since calling Carol Danvers Annihilator, which to go quickly back to Brie Larson, Carol Danvers, that is one thing I will say is that when she talks about feeling bad about being called the Annihilator, and Monica, I didn't want to go back and for you to see me like that. I thought that was maybe the best acting we got out of Brie Larson, and probably the one scene where I was like, oh, this is this is pretty good. Like, this is complexity to her character. But back to Dar-Benn, you know, I was like, oh, this is a really interesting way of her, like, wanting to, you know, because she didn't have beef with anyone but maybe the Annihilator. I'm sorry, Carol Danvers. Really, yeah, her beef was just with Carol Danvers. But her main focus was, like, trying to restore, like, you know, the planet for her people. And for her to be stealing, I was like, oh, that's kind of interesting. Like, she's stealing the atmosphere from this one planet, you know, the ocean from this one planet, and then the sun was an interesting villain plan. But I think the execution just felt, I don't know, it left much to be desired because we didn't really get to know her. It was just like, hey, she's bad, she's doing these bad things, and here's her, you know, one-line justification. But I think if we would have lived with her a little longer, maybe, and given her a way more threatening name, because Dar-Benn just does not strike fear in my heart at all. But she was a badass when she was when she was taking them on, all three of them on towards the end. I was like, damn, the violence in this kind of turned up a notch for a second, you know, like her putting the hammer down on Kamala Khan's head.
Oh yeah,
it was a little like, oh dang, okay, MCU, you still got a little bit of a bite. So that's what comes to mind for me.
Yeah, I mean, Dar-Benn is one of those characters that in the comics, I know. Well, in the comics, I know him from Silver Surfer. He's a big part of the middle run during the early 90s. At one point, even Dar-Benn creates like a robotic Silver Surfer and eventually is like absorbed into the Supreme Intelligence. It's a very vague memory of reading that story. But, you know, in terms of the character in the in the MCU, I want to slightly echo what you said, Botter, in terms of like her half-baked plan. It seems like her arc is very similar to a lot of, and we mentioned this earlier, as like phase 1, phase 2 villains, whereas like a simple conversation with the hero, a 10-minute conversation with Carol would have totally avoided all of this. Hey, guess what? I have binary powers. I can restore your son right now. Okay, cool. We're good. All right, awesome. But of course we can't do that, right? Because then there's no story.
When Monica mentioned that towards the end, I was like, "How long have you been sitting on this information?"
You couldn't have mentioned that. What's going on here? But also, I want to point out as well, Zawe Ashton is engaged to Tom Hiddleston, and we just got the finale of Loki season 2, so they're having quite the weekend. If you guys haven't seen the ending of Loki season 2, a lot of things happening over in that household.
Wow.
So, yeah,
very interesting. Okay, I did not know that. You know what? I'm gonna give you a fun fact. Did you know that the director of the movie, what was it, Nia DaCosta? Is that it? Nia Costa. She's a fellow podcaster. All right, she was a co-creator and a co-writer for this podcast series in 2020 called Ghost Tape, and it was kind of like this ghost military kind of like podcast series. But I thought that was just a quick little fun fact for us.
She's one of us
podcasters on this thing. But yeah, she's one of us. She's one of us. All right. So, anything else to add about Dar-Benn? We good on
probably
that?
Probably a bottom 5 villain of all time.
She's definitely going down, and I think she's definitely or you can rephrase that as
she's either the best worst villain, or she's the worst best villain.
Sure.
One of those two.
Yeah. It's, you know, clearly this movie was not about, you know, telling, giving us an empowering antagonist or, you know, one that we really resonated with. I think, you know, the main job of this, in my eyes, was to pass a torch to Kamala Khan and Iman Vellani and get her set up, you know, and to maybe wrap up some loose ends between Carol and Monica. And if I'm looking at it like that, then I'm like, all right, mission accomplished. But it wasn't, I don't know, it just, I was telling Blythe this, Chris, I had a moment, and I don't think it's because of this movie per se. I think it's just I've had the MCU on my mind all week, for the last 2 weeks, with the Variety article and the last episode we recorded with Reggie. It just got me thinking more and more, is there anything, does the MCU offer me anything at this point? You know, like I have stuck with it, you know, fanatically for the last, and I'm just talking MCU, you know, 10, 11 years. I think going on 12 years now, 13 years now. And it's like, what else can I get from it that they haven't already delivered? And maybe this is where I hop off the train and, you know, catch it when I can. I think it's safe to say it's no longer a top priority for me, because even I feel like, you know, I feel the fatigue. I feel the subpar product. You know, it's just starting to weigh on me. Like, man, what else can I truly get out of this? That, you know what I'm saying? I think Endgame was such a good point for me to just maybe hop off and like, okay, what have I been putting on the back burner all these years? What are the movies and the other cinema that I've missed out on? And this year, you know, to kind of derail it a little bit, this year I had a mission of like, I'm going to watch more non-superhero movies, more non-comic book movies. And, you know, obviously Blythe's been with me to every single movie, and you know, we did a count, and we're, you know, close to like 20, 30 movies this year. And it's safe to say all of the comic book superhero ones are lower on my, you know, on my scale compared to like some of these original movie stories and, you know, some of these other franchises that we've been watching. I just don't know if the MCU has anything to offer me at this point, maybe other than like cameos and like, you know, fan theories. And I think the end credit scene for this movie is a prime example of that, where, you know, now we're just kind of getting into it right here, but seeing
Henry.
Beast on the screen, I mean, it
was a
like,
whoa moment.
It was an absolute whoa moment. It was like, wow, this is, I'm seeing the fucking Beast on the screen. And if you're watching the video version, you know, Chris has got an X-Men shirt on. You know, that was awesome, but I don't know if it's worth, you know, it's like, well, what about the movie? You know, like, I still want to have a really great experience with the main movie. This is like 5-10 seconds, you know, a minute or two. Like, is it really worth making these movies a priority anymore? Like they used to. I don't think it's there for me personally. Blythe, do you want to add to that?
I was just going to say, when I first saw him on screen, it was a whoa moment, but I also immediately went back to WandaVision when we got the Quicksilver cameo, and I was so excited, and only to have the rug pulled out from under me.
Yeah.
So that was my... after I immediately said, whoa, it was, okay, wait a minute. Are they going to pull one over me again?
Yeah.
And so it was that sort of moment for me, even though
Yeah.
I still thoroughly enjoy, I am an X-Men fan at heart, but I still am like a little like gun shy to be super excited about the X-Men entering the MCU.
You know, I said last episode that, in my opinion, the MCU still has 2, maybe 3 really strong, like, blue chips. Fantastic Four, X-Men. I think when they drop those, or we get them on screen, you know, that's going to be, in my opinion, like, make or break. I think that really could give them a second wind and, you know, get their,
It worries
you know,
me.
like, really shift the energy. But after... And once again, it's not because of this movie exactly per se, but just thinking holistically of Phase 4 and, you know, just kind of how maybe, you know, lackluster it's been. And even like the start of Phase 5. Shit, where was I? Oh, I'm sorry. I won't lie, it got me a little concerned that, yeah, they might still have the X-Men and Fantastic Four, but if these stories aren't good, then what's the fucking point?
Right.
You know, like, reading that Variety article, you're like, oh, it's not just... You know, there's a whole gamut of obstacles that they still need to like overcome, and really at the heart of it, it comes down to like the script writing. You know, good stories. It don't matter if we get to see Cyclops and Wolverine and fucking Reed Richards. As much as I want to see them on screen,
Yeah.
it won't matter if the
I think
story is
this
shit,
is
you
going to
know?
be well. Oh god, hold on. I'm gonna quickly take a step back because Botter, I hate to tell you this, and I know you already know this, but you're in it, buddy. You're in the business of comic book podcasting. You're going to be paying attention regardless of whether you want to or not.
I know.
Because I'm in the same boat, man. I've felt the decline.
One-
Trust me. I think a lot of us have. And I think a lot of us who are truthful with ourselves and with our taste, we know that the product has not been there since, you know, at least consecutively since Endgame. Really, honestly, I mean, you got No Way Home, you got Guardians 3, and then your mileage varies depending on that. So, all that to be said, the MCU, we're at a pivotal point in the MCU right now. Like, as we're talking right now, the Marvels is, in my opinion, where things can change. Because going into Deadpool next year, because this is the last film we're getting until Deadpool, and Loki's over with, so no more MCU TV for a while either. You know, Deadpool 3... This has been delayed multiple times as well. It was supposed to come out this month, actually. Marvel's was supposed to come out during the summer originally. So the fact that Deadpool has been delayed so much, and now I think Deadpool is even coming out even later. It was really supposed to come out in May of 25 or 24. Now it's coming out in July of 24. So we've got like 6 months or 8 months now. 8 months to wait for the next MCU property. This is the time for them to get their shit together across the board. And I think that Variety article not only sheds light on what has been wrong with the MCU, but it also gives them the ability to reflect a little bit and go, okay, first of all, let's stop treating our VFX people like hamsters in a wheel. Let's do that firstly, can we? Let's tone down the content. Let's stop putting out 3 movies and 3 television series. Let's stop having so much micromanaging behind the scenes. Kevin, we're looking at you, So like all of these things have been, widely broadcasted over the last couple months. I think that if we get Deadpool 3 in November, can we just agree collectively right now with the listeners, with Botter, with Blythe? Let's all just say Deadpool 3, July 2024. If it's shit, we can hop off the train. But I think that's the time. It's not now. It's not with the Marvels, because this movie's been done for a while. Like Blythe had mentioned earlier, this movie has gone through many cycles. Yeah. So it's like this, Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. These movies they had COVID plus all the other shit. Let's wait to Deadpool, because I think that might be the key turning point that we're looking towards.
It's like, yo, look, if you
always see who the pessimist is in the group.
I just do not trust Disney. I do not. Well, right. What evidence has Disney given us that they can take a character that had full creative freedom under Fox to be as edgy as he could be, now to come over into the MCU with all of their writing, all of their VFX, all of the drama within just Disney corporate itself, their need to make money for their shareholders, their need to rely on these characters that are just going to earn a check for them that they maybe don't even necessarily care about. What have they proven? What have they shown that gives any fan right now the ability to trust that they will treat these kind of characters, X-Men characters, Deadpool, any of them with respect? I don't see it. I hope for the best, but plan for the worst. That's where I'm kind of at with the entire MCU right now. I realize Disney as a company needs to make their money for their shareholders, and their only reason they're going to be able to do that is with these familiar characters. They're not going to be able to take any kind of creative freedom or creative experiments. I don't see it. I don't see how they're going to fix anything that is just overall wrong with the corporate culture from the top down. It's just they need to Disney as a whole needs to entirely clean house, and I don't see that happening before Deadpool comes out.
Strong words. I think it goes to, I think you can kind of say a little bit of Chris's point. Like if depending on how they manage Deadpool 3, I think that will be a good barometer, or maybe a fun barometer.
I'll still see. I say all this. I still see it.
Well, I think that
show me Hugh Jackman.
Part of the reason why
show me the yellow
I'm slightly
suit.
confident in Deadpool is just because of the wild amount of creative control that they give Ryan Reynolds. I mean, he's proved, if nothing else, this will really show how much Kevin Feige and co are in control of this universe. Is if they take away what has proved to be a solid success rate with Ryan in the first 2 films of Deadpool over at Fox. If Deadpool 3 is shit, we go, okay, Kevin, might be time to move on, buddy. Or either get out of the kitchen, or that's kind of my thought on it. So
yeah.
And maybe to your earlier point about there's really nothing else going on, so maybe this is Kevin Feige's chance as a creative professional himself to know all of this criticism that's going on, and to maybe have a little bandwidth and breathing room to get it right. So maybe that, glass half full, not to be the negative Nancy for the entire show, but maybe glass half full, this is their opportunity to get it right with where the future kind of holds. Because right now it just feels like the multiverse. It feels like nothing matters. It feels like there's no stakes, and they can kind of do whatever they want. And I think just overall, I don't know if that's a hindrance or a help to what the overall MCU is because there was such a clear path of how we got to Endgame, and now everything just feels so scattered. And I said this earlier, but I don't know what I'm supposed to be paying attention to, and I don't know what matters anymore.
And I think you would like to think maybe I in this phase or in this this new saga of the MCU, I don't need to quite. There doesn't need to be a combined or a singular vision or a singular story. A part of me almost wanted okay, let's just focus on just really good content that could stand on its own. But they just haven't shown me that it quite can. And it's man, I really hope the MCU wasn't a one-trick pony in the sense of they always need to have everything connected. Now, granted, Chris, I think it's safe to say we'd be used to it because we're comic fans, and that's just how comic books go. That shit is mad convoluted. And I think we're seeing that, And a part of me's like, man, I wonder if it only works in the medium of comic books.
Right out of my
mouth. It being live action, you're like, man, comic book movies maybe do need to have certain parameters because when you really try, I don't know.
Can I help you out a little bit?
To formulate that a little better.
Because I've thought about this many times. I'm going to shamelessly plug, but on the Oblivion Bar, I talk about this all the time. The difference between movies and comics is that when you, as a comic fan, you go into that medium understanding that there's going to be a reset of status quo. Like, you know that when you read a story, especially if you read comics like monthly, if you're reading like an ongoing series, you know that regardless of what's happening in the story, at some point, there's no way that they're going to continue the story. You just have to be along for the ride, and eventually there's going to be a time to hop off. And
that's right. The stake, I think you go into it, especially if we're just talking, big two superhero capes and cows. You go into it with a certain level of accepting that the stakes, they're only so high because you also know this shit's going to get reset. Certain characters, like, they're bigger than just, comic books. These are like, global IPs. So I think sometimes as a comic book reader, you put some of those like stakes aside because you're like, let me just focus on the story, the art. There's a lot more to focus on. I think it's a lot harder to put the stakes aside when you're going to a movie and, just from like how much you're paying for the movie, the time commitment, and then also, just trying to make sense of it all with live action and real people. It's a little like jarring and, it kind of takes you out of it sometimes if you don't have stakes. Like
so the downfall of the multiverse saga, and Blythe, you kind of sort of alluded to this, is that I'll just say right off the top before I go into my tangent here, the multiverse, I'm done with it. I'm tired of it. If you guys have seen the end of season 2 of Loki, I'm really hoping that what happens have you guys seen that, by the way? Can I?
Not yet. We do plan on watching that this weekend, but Loki season 2 has been just kind of a reminder. Or I guess it's put me in the same feeling where I'm like, man, I do not give a shit
like, that's
about
the thing, is that
anymore.
And this kind of alludes to what I originally wanted to say, was that movies are written in permanent marker, comics are written in dry erase. So like when you watch John Krasinski's Reed Richards die on screen, when he gets pool noodled, you're like, that's Reed Richards. He just got pool noodled, as did, you've got Professor X getting his neck snapped. You've got like these are real people in my mind, like as I'm watching it happen. And I find it really mean what happened in Multiverse of Madness. If that happens in the comics, my brain goes, oh, it's fine. Because not only are there multiple versions of Reed, but there are also, there'll be a status quo of that Reed at some point down the road. So like, that's the difference for me. And maybe that's wrong. Maybe that's the wrong way to approach it.
Oh shit! No. I think you're onto something, and I think I'm only speaking to maybe like comic heads here. Chris, we are entering the stage of many comic readers, like progress and story. I can't find the right word for it, but you know how you start when you first get into comics, it's the capes, right? Your Marvel, DC, and eventually you grow up. Once you have that realization that there is no real stakes, that these characters are money-making machines. It just, like the amount of control that, certain editors have, and, like that these characters have to fit in these parameters. That's when you normally start going to other titles. Go over here. You go to the independents. You go into, exactly, you go into more like adult comic books that, do have stakes, that aren't going to, have an ending. I think fans of the MCU are realizing that now. They're at where most comic fans start to like, their tastes start, kind of like spreading out, and they're trying a little more, experimental and serious things. I think that's what fans of the MCU are experiencing. Fans of the live action movies are experiencing what comic fans have been experiencing for years and know, which is, when it comes to the big two, don't take this shit too seriously, or you shouldn't take it that seriously. And unfortunately, it's you're watching the comic books, like, it's apples to oranges to the movies, right? Like, these are $1 million movies and big productions. So like, I think this realization is just a lot more noticeable. It means something a little more because it's not, paper.
What also is a major difference is that when they started, at that time, just Iron Man, they were playing with pawns. Iron Man was not a household name. He was they had one shot to make one decent movie to save their entire company. Like if Iron Man had been a failure, which at that time, I don't know if people know this, but Iron Man was only the 8th highest grossing film of 2008. It was not even in the top 5. But they had to just make an okay movie just to keep afloat, and they just kept building and building with these B-list characters, Captain America, Thor, all these characters that. But now here's the thing: now that they've gotten success, and now they're playing with your Rook, with your King, your Queen, your Spider-Man, your X-Men, your Fantastic Four. Now there's actual stakes. You know what I mean? And if you fail with Spider-Man, with Fantastic Four, with X-Men, you're donezo. You have nothing to do but reboot and try again. And that's what they've done. I mean, we've seen it. We've seen how many Spider-Man movies over the last 10 years. X-Men, same thing. Batman is another great example. Superman. There's multiple examples of these companies that when they don't make $1 billion and they're not crazy successes, they just go, well, it's a character that people like. We'll do it. We'll try again.
Yeah. Damn. We wanted. I was thinking this episode is going to be a little more uplifting than the last one, because I felt like the last episode, the Variety article, we were maybe a little critical. We spent a lot of time on MCU. Safe to say, listeners, you got part 2 of last week's episode.
Well, it's very well deserved, because I struggle with this, because I wonder, going back to, okay, what is important? What should I be paying attention to? What matters? What's being retconned? For example, like the Loki, the Infinity Stones in the drawer. You're taught for 10 years that those were the most deadly things in the entire galaxy, and now they mean nothing. And then and now you're coming into all of these Disney Plus series, and it doesn't feel like they're spending a lot of time on them. And I think back a lot to my uncle, who watched all of the MCU movies up until Endgame, and then went and saw Multiverse of Madness, didn't see WandaVision, and had no idea what was going on, had no idea of the character change that Wanda had made. And so I go back to that kind of fan a lot. The one who's only going to go to the movies, who's not going to be watching these Disney Plus shows. And what are the stakes? What's important? And I don't know that Disney as a company can handle that right now. And I think massively they made a huge mistake by not taking 1 to 2 years off after Endgame and just letting the dust settle a little bit, allowing them to gather themselves to develop what is next. And now they're sort of scrambling. And I think that the next few movies really could sort of cement where this genre as a whole sort of, they're at a fork in the road. And I feel like they've been at this fork in the road for a little while now. And now the stakes in the MCU feel much higher than it does in the actual movie universe.
You laid it out perfectly. I think, I think the multiverse, it does away with stakes. That literally, if anyone dies, we can go into another universe. I mean, we see it in this movie. We see Maria die in this movie, and then bam, at the end of the movie, here's another binary, everybody. Here she is. That's what you can do in this current MCU. And just like in my favorite event comic of all time, which is Secret Wars from 2015 by Jonathan Hickman and Asad Ribic, the only thing to do with the multiverse, once you've done everything, is to destroy it. And I hope that happens sooner than later.
Yeah. Yeah, I would be down to watch. I'd be down to watch that. All right, how about we end this with just looking at the future of the MCU. We made a joke. We had trouble kind of like honing in on what phase that we're in, but we are in phase 5. And at the time of this recording, I think a day or two prior to today, there was the announcement that a lot of the phase 5 planned movies and shows, there was a lot of shift in the schedule. So I'm looking at an article from Games Radar that I think lays out the most current Marvel Phase 5 news. And Chris, you kind of hinted at it. We're getting, 1 or 2 movies and shows next year. And I've got Echo will come out in January 10th of next year. They've already showed the trailer. That's got people talking. And we're only going to get one MCU film next year, which is Deadpool 3 in July 26th. Captain America: Brave New World, Thunderbolts, Blade are slated for 2025, and we don't have any dates for Agatha: Darkhold Diaries, Daredevil: Born Again, or Ironheart. Those
what
are
about
all
the 2
TBA.
Avengers movies? Those are not in the next couple of years?
May 1st, 2026.
I would imagine.
And then that's Kang Dynasty. And then Secret Wars is May 7th, 2027. So we'll be in our 40s by the time we get to see Secret Wars.
So is it just... And you know what? I think I'm going to end this personally on a high note here and say that I am excited for because it's apparent that they are building up a new generation, a younger team, and I'm excited for the next generation of MCU fans to like get their thing right, like to get the characters that hopefully they get to grow up with and watch prosper and be in films and whatever direction they're going in. That's how I feel with the MCU is that. There's torches being passed to a new generation. And, once again, I think I just got to ask myself, like, am I going to be downed up for this ride every single time? Or is it time for me to just, maybe like just take a more of a step back? I think that's where I'm at right now. But I am excited to watch and see how this new generation takes, how they take like the new faces for the MCU. So far, like, it's a very promising lineup from Amon to Kate Bishop and even Shang-Chi.
Catherine Newton
like Shang-Chi, I really enjoyed.
As Cassie Lang,
I think he'll be more of a
well. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. So I'm excited to see
like,
where they go with the new
Cassie
faces.
ain't
I
it.
didn't really like her.
Stature ain't it.
Yeah, she was like, nah. All right.
Kamala Khan.
What's
Haley
your
Steinfeld,
temperature with
I
America
liked
Chavez?
them a lot.
Where you at with her?
What's her old girl from?
Yelena Belova.
Yeah, for Black Widow. I do really like her as Florence. Yeah.
Yeah. See what I'm saying? Like, yeah, they got some badass women. Like for this like next phase, like some really charismatic, talented, like young women.
Yeah,
like,
who's even the young
actresses?
who's the young male
coming up
heroes? Do we even?
That's what I'm saying. When I said Shang-Chi, I'm like,
Shang-Chi
I
would
don't
be an
think he's
Avenger.
that
He wouldn't be a young
I
Avenger
think
or a
Simon
champion.
Liu
He
is
would
like
be
that young. Yeah. It'll be up to Tom Holland and Simon Liu and Anthony Mackie.
Doctor Strange
I
is
guess,
still
to hold it
around,
down.
and-
but they're a little older. But anyway,
Can I just say before we move on? I just want to say very
All right,
quickly. I can sit here because I'm in
go
the
ahead,
same boat as you, Botter and Blythe. I'm assuming you're in a similar boat as well. Yeah, my enthusiasm for the MCU is definitely at an all-time low, I would say right now, which really stinks. And we're going to be doing our review, for the Marvels on the Oblivion Bar this week as well. And I plan on going in on this film, even though I enjoyed it. I think there's a lot of issues with it. I could sit here and tell you with all sincerity that I don't feel great about it. But the moment that I get even the smallest whiff of Silver Surfer showing up in this universe, I am fucking in, man. I am in.
yeah, you're like,
Give me
I
Dr.
take it
Doom
back,
or Silver
take it back,
Surfer, and I am the biggest MCU fan again.
Can I say one thing that came to mind when you brought up Multiverse of Madness is that we technically already have seen an X-Men.
Yeah.
We saw Professor X, and I do remember that moment being like, "Whoa, Patrick Stewart is on screen." So I'm like, why was I so hyped to see Hank McCoy Beast on here? I've already seen an X-Men, and I think it's because I actually got to see like a mutant. Like,
we need to go back around.
Blue fur. Beast.
Because
if
you guys haven't seen it. Ms. Marvel on Disney Plus. One of the very last scenes of the series is them telling everyone. So what happens is one of Kamala's friends goes up to her and goes, goes up to Kamala and goes, "I've been studying your blood. I don't know why you got these powers, but it's almost like a ... pause for drama mutation." And then you hear a da na 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 in the background. That literally happens, and that's when Marvel Comics went, "Oh, you know what? We should change Kamala's origin. We kill her. Let's kill her in Spider-Man randomly. And then we're going to make her a mutant
baby.
instead of an Inhuman because Inhumans
Yeah.
are out, baby. We don't need the Inhumans. They're boring."
Yeah. Yeah. That's funny. Just stop teasing us, all right? Just tell us if X-Men is going to be good or not. All right, Blythe, you got any closing remarks about the movie or just MCU in general?
I think I'm just kind of at the phase where I just understand that it's just going to be a couple hours of escapism, but it's not going to be something that I rewatch. So, typically, like, there's a lot of weekends where you got the marathons of all the, Endgame and all the Avengers movies and things like that. And I will have that on in the background. None of this other, Phase 4 stuff is on in the background for me.
Well,
I'm not
come out yet, but yeah.
Well, I'm not rewatching it, and I don't even know what like the distribution plan is for that kind of content, because I think that's just an interesting, fascinating discussion to have just sidebar separately. But I don't know what the rewatchability is for any of these shows or any of these movies.
Okay.
None of them really in Phase 4. Have you
That brings up a
rewatched
really good
anything
point
in Phase 4?
because I'm looking at this. I'm looking at Phase 4 right now. The only movie that I've rewatched since I saw it in theaters was Spider-Man: No Way Home. Everything else I could care less to see again.
And I don't even really count Spider-Man.
I think there was a few I wanted to rewatch. Like I wanted to really rewatch Guardians of the Galaxy 3 in theaters, but it just, just time and life got in the way. Like I wanted to. Actually, I think we did rewatch Shang-Chi on Disney Plus, and that one still held up. But you're right. I think a majority of them. Like I wouldn't go back and watch Thor: Love and Thunder. I definitely.
Let's just go down the line really quick because I actually spaced Shang-Chi. So I'm gonna say a movie, and you guys tell me if you would rewatch it enthusiastically. Black Widow.
Okay. All right.
You would watch Black Widow again?
Yes.
Yeah, I'd catch it on if it was on TV. I'd catch it.
I'm one of the minorities that really liked it.
Okay. Yes.
The Eternals.
We literally rewatched it. Yeah.
Damn, Blythe is like a Phase 4 fanatic. Like, I'm in.
That was good. You know what? I would. Yeah, I'm like.
I haven't.
Are you sure?
I say that.
You don't. You know.
No, I mean, I've told you this, and I've said this on this podcast before that I really liked the Eternals, mostly because of the history, complex.
She loves some prehistoric civilization. She loves civilizations, right? I would say I would rewatch that one just to see if my mood changes on it or my outlook.
Okay,
changes
Spider-Man: No Way Home.
So yes, I'm gonna say yes, begrudgingly. That was the other movie.
Disney doesn't get this credit. Disney does not get Spider-Man credit, in my opinion.
It is produced by Kevin Feige.
They 100% get this credit.
No, Sony gets Sony gets the credit, in my opinion.
I will say the co-credit, but yes, absolutely,
Multiverse of Madness.
Absolutely, No Way Home, easy rewatch.
No.
Yes, I am in, I guess, a minority that I actually really did enjoy Multiverse of Madness.
I actually despise all three of these next three movies, including Multiverse of Madness. I will not rewatch Multiverse of Madness. Thor: Love and Thunder. I hate it.
No.
I remember sitting in the theater thinking, I cannot wait for this movie.
It's crazy because if you had told me that Multiverse
it.
of Madness, Thor: Love and Thunder, and then Black Panther: Wakanda Forever, which is another big no for me, that those were going to be the three movies in 2022. I remember thinking like this could be the best year in MCU history. And I would also say no to Black Panther: Wakanda Forever because I didn't think it was that good.
Oh, I would rewatch that for no, I would definitely rewatch that, and I would rewatch it on
if it was
TV.
on TNT at 2 p.m.
I would rewatch
on a Saturday
it in theaters.
Right.
Well,
yeah.
I think it just needs a little bit of a breather because it's so immersively
emotional.
It's emotional, and you kind of get immersed in it. But I absolutely would love to watch that again, just to see Submariner again, and I'm drawing a blank on his sister name, Shuri. Like I thought they stole the show. What else is in Phase 4? Because I'm kind of hearing us there's a lot of
drinking the Kool-Aid, everybody.
And I'm trying to figure out maybe the problem is that the Disney Plus shows adds another layer of home. It almost feels like homework where it's like I don't really want to. I can sit down and watch these movies for 3 hours is pushing it, but 2 hours. But you want me to commit 8, 9, 10 hours, and they're not like Secret Invasion. No disrespect to Miss Marvel, but you know what I'm saying? It's like I've got all this extra homework. I kind of liked it when I just had one homework assignment instead of 10 hours. So finish this list really quick and
Nope.
No.
Well,
no.
Guardians 3.
I think this is where things go downhill.
Okay, and then
Damn, there's a lot of rewatch. I feel like I contradict myself.
Okay, and then finally, would you watch the Marvels again?
No.
Nah, I think it's a pass. This was, you know what? This is how I'm gonna close out this episode. I think it's safe to say, the Marvels is a one and done. I'm not mad. I went and spent money to go see it, but I wouldn't do it again. If anything, I would probably, if I had a choice where they're either rewatch the Marvels or watch 6, 7 hours of Miss Marvel Disney Plus, I'd go Disney Plus just to rewatch, just to watch nothing but Iman Vellani.
And that's where I kind of struggle with with a lot of the MCU stuff is nowadays is it okay to just kind of escape for a couple of hours and just be done with it?
I think
Does it need to be something that I dive into Reddit immediately after and watch all of the YouTube videos like I have in the past, which I really, really enjoy, but maybe it's just okay to just escape for a couple of hours and be fine with it.
I think that is absolutely you do deserve it, right? Like these movies can coexist with like, you know, your fucking Martin Scorsese movies, right? Like they can coexist with other genres. Like it's fine for them to be popcorn, you know, turn your brain off movies. I just think that, you know, personally speaking, I'm at a point where I don't know if I want all this candy. I think now, after doing 10, 11 years and, you know, ending it on Endgame, I'm okay maybe like skipping some of these to just, you know, partake in some other things. Like I've said earlier, I think I'm at that point in my comic book journey where I'm like, hey, what else is out there? You know, like what else?
Skip Echo?
I think if I skip, I wouldn't be mad if I skipped Echo. But watching, help me out here, Chris, who plays Kingpin? I wouldn't mind watching all of his episodes. Like,
well, you know what's funny is that
really
the last two movies that I've seen is Killers of the Flower Moon and then The Marvels. So I am riding that Marty train right now. And I want to briefly say, yeah, I mean, too much brain candy is definitely a bad thing for sure. I'm still in, guys. Yeah. I hate to admit it, but I'm still drinking the Kool-Aid. I'm telling you, you can sit here, you can lie to people all you want. You're going to be watching these movies and television series. You gotta.
Look, if anything, that refresh game exposed me as the filthy liar I am. Anyways, Chris, Blythe, I appreciate the both of you spending time with me on this episode. We went a little longer than I thought. I was like, you know, I'm gonna be courteous. We're recording. It's already like 12:30. It's already Saturday night or morning, whatever you want to see it. But regardless, I appreciate the both of you a lot. I'm gonna have links to both of you know, your Twitters, your socials in the show notes. Chris, I have a link to the Oblivion Bar podcast. People can check out you and Aaron's Marvel's review. Blythe, I guess if anyone listening is interested in logistics and trucking and marketing, they can check out your show.
Don't laugh, it's important.
No, I think there's a lot of crossover appeal. All right, you know, look, if anything, the fans will be like, "Yay, another Blythe episode!" You know, so we gave them something.
Well, really quick plug for just supply chain and transportation and freight and all that good stuff. I'm really high on it because it is the story of human civilization. So it's the story of how our purchasing behavior influences the rest of the world and geopolitics and all that good stuff. So, I mean, if you like the greater like MCU stuff, that's all
nice and cool. But if you want to listen to a couple of dopes talk about Moon Knight, come over to the Oblivion Bar podcast. New episodes every Monday. Woo!
I did really like Moon Knight too.
Yeah,
so
that's a. You know what? I don't even want to keep us on for a little longer because I'm about to go into some Moon Knight stuff. But anyways, listeners, there you have it, Shortbox Nation. That is our show for today. Thank you for hanging out with us. We really appreciate you spending your time with us. If you enjoyed this episode, do me a very, very, very small favor. Please leave a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, or simply tell a friend about this show. All right, word of mouth and ratings and reviews, they help us out in a major way. I know every podcast asks you to do that, but there's a reason why all of them do. It doesn't require much on your part, and it goes a long way in helping us grow this show. If you'll stick around for another minute, which I highly encourage, you'll hear a short clip from Jerome Cabanatan, the creator of a brand new Kickstarter campaign that just launched. It's called Everyday Black Belter. It's a collection of comics from the mind of a martially artistic family man. It's also the inaugural start of a brand new segment that we're trying out. Haven't really landed on a name yet. I'm kind of hovering around kick-ass Kickstarters. But the goal is to put a spotlight on up-and-coming indie creators and really dope comic projects that you can find and back on Kickstarter. All right, the Everyday Black Belter will be linked in this episode's description and show notes, so if it piques your interest, check it out, support. Big shout out to Jerome. Besides that, you can catch us next Wednesday for a brand new episode, and or you can join us over on Patreon if you want bonus content, extra episodes. Full disclaimer, it's not free, but it's also not expensive at all to support the podcast and get extra perks and rewards. And we really try hard to make it worth your time and support. So consider joining our Patreon community at patreon.com/theshortbox, or support us for free by, like I said, leaving a rating, review, or telling a friend. In the meantime, hell yeah, Chris is over there and he co-signs it. In the meantime, enjoy hearing from Jerome. Take care of yourselves. Go read your comics and continue to make mine and yours Shortbox. I'll catch you next week. Peace. All right.